Hello everybody and welcome to Omnipoke, the channel that brings you everything Pokemon. I'm Jack and today I'm going to be going over another deck analysis. This time it's going to be Yveltal Garbodor, a pretty straight list. Now, it's been doing quite well in the UK recently. I know Sammy Sakum piloted it into the finals of Manchester Regionals that Joe went to a few weeks ago. I know he took it straight to the finals and I can't say I know whether he won or not, but getting to the finals is an achievement in itself. But yeah, let's get straight into it. The first card we're running is actually two of the baby Yveltals. Now, a lot of people cut this out when Sableye was still in format, but now that Yveltal's lost some of the big tools it used to use, like Sableye and Dark Patch, we've had to find other alternatives. Plus, this works as a great Donphan counter because of the 20 resistance. So the main attack that we're going to be using on it is Oblivion Wing, which does 30 for a single energy and lets you attach a dark from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon, which helps power up the big Yveltal EXs even quicker. Since there's no Dark Patch in the format anymore, it means we've got to use alternatives like Oblivion Wing to get Yveltal EX hitting as hard as possible, as quickly as possible. Like I said, again, that resistance to fighting is really nice. It means that Donphan and fighting can really struggle to one-shot this guy, especially as Fighting Stadium also doesn't work on it since it's not an EX. So they're going to, in effect, be doing 20 less damage since they won't have the support of Fighting Stadium or due to the resistance on the Yveltal. So both Donphan and sort of big basic fighting decks really can struggle with taking out one of the baby Yveltals in one shot. We're also running 3 Yveltal EX. This is the deck's main attacker, pretty much just for that Evil Ball attack, just to clock up big damage, 20 plus 20 more for each each energy attached to both active Pokemon, meaning that you can really sort of build up the damage super high, especially with some of the other cards that we've got in the deck that also increase the amount of damage you're doing per turn. Also, that Y Cyclone attack is incredibly good for preserving your energy. If you know that your Yveltal is going to be going down next turn, you can do a straight 90, which is automatically two-shot in an EX anyway, and you can move one of your energy onto one of the benched Pokemon. It doesn't matter whether you want to move the Dark, or if you've got a double colourless on it, you can move the double colourless as well. So it's incredibly useful for preserving energy, meaning that when one of your Yveltals goes down, it's not sort of all of your eggs in one basket, and you can still apply that pressure later on, well, in the next turn, providing you've Y-Cycloned some of the energy off. We're also running a 2-2 line of the Garbodor. Now, this Garbodor is seen so much lately, simply for this Garbotoxin ability. If Garbodor's got a tool attached to it, it means that no other abilities in play are actually have their effects. So it can really shut down some decks that are very ability based. It can completely shut them down. It also helps with things like being able to give status to Virgen Genesect and not letting things like Suicune stop Yveltal attacking them. So while these aren't major sort of parts of how the deck works, it helps with little things that could hold up the progress of the deck every so often. So it's just a really nice card to have, and since we don't run any abilities ourselves, there's no hindrance to running that 2-2 line anyway. It's only 4 cards and 3 float stones, so it's only 7 cards, and you're going to be improving a lot of matchups. Onto the trainers, we've got 2 Bike, simply because it's one of the best, it's probably the best pseudo supporter out there at the moment. I don't like roller skates at all, but if you manage to lower your hand down, if you manage to lower your hand down, you can get up to 4 cards straight just with Bike, sometimes before you've even used a supporter. Obviously, sometimes you'll only be able to get 1 or 2, or maybe 3, but you can get up to 4 with Bike, and it's just a really nice draw alternative if you want to be using a Lysander or a Juniper instead of a Juniper this turn. So you've still got some draw support in the deck even without supporters. The aspect we've gone for is Computer Search because it's probably the best search in the game at the moment, discarding 2 cards and searching your deck for any card you want. And also you don't reveal that card to your opponent, so if you want to hold something in hand for the next turn, they're not going to know exactly what you're doing, meaning that they're going to have to end you to get that out of your hand, no matter what it is, which might not always be the best for them. Also, with this double discard from the hand, it helps power up that Oblivion Wing attack because we can manage to discard one of the Dark Energy to be able to power up another Pokemon with Oblivion Wing on turn 1. So any of these cards that actually discard cards don't really hurt the deck too much at all, considering the energy can be retrieved with Oblivion Wing, and a couple of other cards. We've also got things like VS Seeker to get supporters back. So there's no real issue with discarding 2 cards. We've got 1 Escape Rope, pretty much just for the Donphan matchup, and getting out of poison and stuff ourselves if we don't have any other way of retreating. Donphan players love to hit and switch. Well, that's pretty much all they do, bar the odd wreck every now and again. So if they're hitting and switching and then hiding behind a sub robot or a Sigilyph or anything like that, with that Escape Rope we can switch up the board, make them sometimes have to promote their Donphan for us to be able to take it out. Also, because we've got our own switch and 3 float stones, we can often Escape Rope into something that will have free retreat, so the Escape Rope doesn't really affect us, and it can be sort of a pseudo Lysander, meaning that we can catch something up that perhaps the opponent didn't want us taking a prize or 2 prizes on, and deal with that, sometimes completely wiping all of their energy off the field, in Donphan's case, when they've only got 1 Donphan out, which is really nice. We've got 4 Hypnotoxic Laser, simply for the fact that it just increases damage so well, especially paired with Verbank, and on a coin flip you can put the opponent to sleep. By doing this, it can really slow decks down if they don't have a way of getting rid of this status, and they don't flip heads on the sleep flip. Obviously, the extra damage is really nice as well. It really helps with Yveltal's maths for knocking out 170 and 180 HP basics. With you don't need too much energy on either you or them. If they're on 170 HP basic and you've used a laser and you've got muscle bands and things like that, you don't really need too much extra support to be able to one-shot some of these big EX cards that can give you 2 prizes for no real effort with Yveltal. We've got a Professor's Letter just to be able to search out 2 Dark Energy, hopefully turn 1 to attach to the baby Yveltal and then 1 to discard to power up that Oblivion Wing attack, meaning that you've always got another attacker going even on turn 1 when most decks will only be attaching 1, sometimes 2 energy, but a lot of the time only attaching 1. If you go second and attack with Yveltal, you can be powering up another Yveltal or starting to power up a Yveltal EX on the second turn, which is really, really strong. And it sometimes presents threats out of nowhere, especially if your opponent thinks you've got rid of all your energy and you've still got your Professor Letter late game. You can grab that last energy and take the last 2 prizes, sometimes completely out of nowhere. I've got 1 Megaphone in here. Now, like I said, Garbodor doesn't affect the deck at all, because the only ability we're running is our own Garbodor. So there's no big issue with having a lot of Megaphone to be able to get rid of tools on Garbodor. That's not really an issue for us. However, the main thing that I've got the Megaphone in here for is for when Donphan players want to send something up with a float stone that perhaps has a 2 or 3 retreat cost, that they're just going to sit behind, like a Snorlax or one of the Outragers. So we can get rid of that float stone, meaning that they're going to have another float stone or be able to manually attach to get rid of that sort of wall out of the active position. It also gets rid of their muscle bands quite nicely, meaning that if you're facing off a Donphan with a baby Yveltal, they're going to take even longer to be able to knock you out, just with the fact that baby Yveltal's got resistance and isn't affected by Fighting Stadium. If they then don't have the support of their muscle bands as well, they're going to have to rely on strong energy to be doing anywhere near enough damage to one-shot you, which is really, really nice. We've got 1 switch. Again, the 1 Escape Rope 1 switch is pretty simple. If you manage to Escape Rope in something you don't want, but you know you've got a switch in deck, you can search for the switch. And also it just helps getting out of sticky situations where you start with a Yveltal EX and have no way of powering it up, or you start with a Trubbish and evolve into Garbodor and anything like that. It just helps you get out of these situations where you wouldn't have your ideal starter up at taking the brunt of the damage. So obviously a switch is pretty staple in most decks as well. 4 Ultra Ball, again, there's no reason not to run 4 in this deck. It grabs any of the Pokemon, and the deck really doesn't mind this discard of 2 cards from the hand, because you can discard the Dark Energy to be able to power up Oblivion Wing, which is obviously the deck's main energy acceleration. So being able to search for any of your Pokemon and powering up that Oblivion Wing attack, and sometimes getting a supporter in the discard for a VS Seeker late game, there's no real downside to not running running sort of 3 or 2, especially as the only other search Pokemon-wise in the deck is actually computer search. There's no other real reason to not run 4 in the deck. It's just a really strong sort of search support for any of the Pokemon you need. We've got 2 VS Seeker. I haven't got 4 in here simply because there's not enough one-off supporters. The supporter line is relatively simple. It's similar to most supporter lines, sort of a standard supporter line. So there's no real reason to have more than 2 VS Seeker, going up to 4 perhaps, because the only one-off supporter we run is actually Colress, and a lot of the time you only want to be Colressing once or twice per game, so you're not going to need the 4 VS Seeker to be able to do so. Obviously VS Seeker is really good for Lysanders out of nowhere, and getting the last Juniper to search for that last resource. But I don't like putting 4 VS Seeker in here overall if there's no real reason to, because we've only got, like I say, one supporter that's a one-of, so therefore we can't discard them early on to be able to then VS Seeker for them late game when we definitely want them. It's no real effect on us. Plus, having 4 would mean in the Seismitoad matchup there would just be 4 dead cards if they can start Quaking Punching on turn 2. So just reducing that risk of drawing dead with the Seismitoad is really nice as well. It means that we don't have to sort of keep drawing and passing and letting them Quaking Punch, taking chunks out of any of our attackers. We've got 1 Colress, like I said, just because Colress late game when you've both got a big bench can get up to 10 cards, and it also preserves resources because it's a shuffle in rather than a discard and draw. So it can save the couple of resources you need in your hand, but still get a large enough hand to be able to do big things late game. Unlike N, which can sometimes, it will save your resources, but sometimes only give you 1 or 2 cards, meaning that you can't really do too much with the hand you've got anymore. There's no real reason to put another in, obviously, because Chorus is very situational, it's very late game, and starting with it is incredibly sort of inefficient, considering a lot of the time you won't have any more than about 4 basics on both players' turn 1s, because a lot of decks don't play enough to be able to draw into the basics quick enough for Chorus to be as good as anything like N or Juniper. But I think 1 here is still really nice, considering you are always going to have probably something on the bench, considering we've got Garbodor and 3 Yveltal EXs, and then things to power up the bench. There's a nice reason to have things on the bench, therefore I think a Chorus is pretty justifiable in the deck. We've got 2 Lysander, just because Lysander is such a good card, especially against things like Landorus, Donphan, that can hit and switch, deal huge damage to our Yveltals, and then hide behind a sub-robot that we're not going to be taking a prize for, or anything like that. So Lysander means that we can grab the Donphan up and take it out. Sometimes if they've put all of their energy onto one Donphan, it sometimes can put them 2 or 3 turns behind from being able to knock us out again, considering the Yveltal X, I forgot to mention, also has the 20 resistance. So by Lysandering up their Donphans, it really helps. It really helps sort of even that matchup out. And the matchup can sometimes be difficult because Donphan absolutely loves dealing big damage to EXs, even when, like Yveltal has resistance. It doesn't matter. Donphan still loves doing huge damage to Yveltal and then hiding behind something like a sub-robot. So having 2 Lysander just means we can grab the Donphan up and take it out. It also means we don't mind at all discarding 1 or sometimes even both with the Ultra Balls or Computer Search. Because of that 2 VS Seeker, we know we're going to be able to get them back late game and take perhaps the last prize that we need, or the last 2 prizes that we need, on anything that we've hit and then they've managed to switch out. Considering there's nothing that snipes in the deck, we are going to have to take everything out that's in the active. So by having 2 Lysander and 2 VS Seeker, it means we have 4 outs to be able to get what we want and be able to take out anything that they've decided to preserve on the bench. I've only got 3 N in here simply because N is not too strong late game, and sometimes the deck really requires you to be able to draw strong not only early game but late game as well. Obviously, you want to be grabbing your energy and your muscle bands and your lasers when you crucially need them to be able to deliver these one-hit knockouts. And if you're ending yourself to 1 or 2 cards, you're reducing the chance of being able to get hypnotoxic lasers and double colorless and things like that to take the big knockouts at the end of the game. And it's still 3N is pretty good because it's still a good disruption card, and obviously you can use it early game for a fresh 6 cards, preserving some of the resources that you want. Things like if you start with your computer search and you don't want to use it, or you start with 2 DCs and you can't use them both. N is still really good early game to preserve the resources that you've already got, but I don't feel 4 is needed in the deck. We've got 4 Professor Juniper simply because 4 Juniper is pretty much staple in every deck at the moment. I know some decks are running support accounts as low as 8 supporters, but all of the decks I've seen have still had 4 Juniper, no matter what. It's just such a good draw supporter. Discard in your hand, like I said, discards are really not a big problem for the deck, considering you can get the supporters back with VS Seeker and Dark Energy back with Yveltal. There's not a lot in the deck that is really lost from discarding the hand. There are sometimes cards that you need, but overall I think the benefits outweigh the losses, and 4 Juniper is just such a strong draw engine. There's no reason whatsoever not to not have at least, 4 Juniper in your deck. The final supporter is 3 Skylar, just to pretty much search out that computer search when you need any card, or the Hypnotoxic Laser, or the Muscle Band, or the Head Ringer, just to grab that last card that can sometimes mean the game. Or early game, when you're missing perhaps an energy, you can go for the Professor's Letter to grab 2 energy, or anything like that. Skylar's just so versatile, it can grab any of these trainers, even the supporters or the stadiums. It can just grab them when you need them. And you can also, if you know you're going up against something like a trainer lock deck, you can Skylar for a supporter for the next turn, so you're not going to be relying on VS Seeker or top deck or anything, or top decking the supporter or anything like that. It's just such a versatile and flexible card. You can use it in so many situations just to grab exactly what you need. It's a really, really good card to have in the deck. We've got 2 Verbank City Gym. There's not a lot of stadium wars going on at the moment, considering the main stadium being used is actually Fighting Stadium by Domfan and sometimes Big Basics. So you don't really, the only matchup you're going to be fighting for the stadium, fighting the stadium wars in, is Domfan. And considering we've already got a lot of checks for Domfan, with like the Baby Yveltal and the Lysanders, the third Verbank really isn't needed too well. Obviously a third one would be nice, but the deck is relatively, there's not really much space in it. So I decided to cut out the third Verbank. It doesn't affect the deck too much, really. I'm always drawing into them when I need them, and against decks that don't play stadiums whatsoever, like Virgen, and sometimes some steel decks don't play Steel Shelter or anything like that, you can just throw the Verbank down, knowing that it's going to be safe for the rest of the game, and then sort of discard the other one with a Computer Searcher, an Ultra Ball, or a Juniper without any regrets at all, because you know that Verbank in the active position is not going to be going anywhere, and you're going to be doing an extra 20 damage per turn for poison, which is really, really good. Especially, like I said, it really helps with the numbers with Yveltal. We've got 3 Floatstone pretty much just for Garbodor, just because it requires a tool to activate that Garbotoxin ability. So the 3 Floatstone is the best tool, considering it makes this 3 Retreater completely free with retreats, and it means that you don't have any issue with them capturing it with Garbodor to stall for any time, because you've got a Floatstone on it. You can get rid of out of the active and be able to carry on hitting, applying pressure with Yveltal and Baby Yveltal. 3 I feel is a pretty good number. You've only got 2 Garbodor, and you're probably only going to have 1 out at once, but it means you're always getting the Floatstone when you need it. Even if you've got an extra one, you could sometimes attach it to another thing on the bench, just so that can't be Lysandered up or anything like that, just to prevent anything sort of stopping you from being able to hit each turn. However, the main thing you're going to be wanting to attach to your Yveltals and Yveltal EXs is actually Muscle Band, considering it's just an extra 20 damage. There's no sort of other way about it. It's just that extra 20 damage is just so strong. Like I said, it's another card that really helps with the maths. Really helps this Evil Ball attack do huge damage out of nowhere, and there's no reason whatsoever not to be able to do an extra 20 damage. It also means Oblivion Wing is then 4-shotting rather than 6-shotting a big EX, which is no real difference, but any extra damage is better than nothing, and it just makes the pressure on the big Yveltal EX a little bit less, considering that they have to do 20 less damage when they come in and Evil Ball against whatever you've hit with the baby Yveltal. The last two trainers are two Headringers, pretty much just for the Virgen matchup and Seismitoad matchup. It just means that they sometimes cannot even get a turn 2 Emerald Slash in Virgin's case because they require an extra energy, or a turn 2 or turn 1 even Quaking Punch because Quaking Punch is DC compatible. It means they sometimes have to wait an extra turn to be able to start attacking, which can just give you that one extra turn of being able to do what you want, use trainers, get energy on, anything like that. And it's just a really good disruption card. If you can't get them onto the Virizions, it doesn't hurt to get them onto the Genesects, meaning that they have to attach 4 energy just to G-Booster, which the reason why G-Booster is so good is the fact that it's only 3 energy. So then increasing it to 4 makes it a really difficult card to play against, especially if you get them at the right times and are able to attach them to your opponent's EX Pokemon exactly when they don't want you to, when they're just about to start a big attack. You can sort of slow them down a little bit and keep your EXs, anything, alive for perhaps one extra turn, just meaning that you can take the game a little bit earlier, or sometimes completely turn the game around. Finally, the energy. We've got 4 double colourless, just because it's so good for powering up both Y Cyclone and Evil Ball. It's an extra 40 damage for Evil Ball, and then can be preserved with Y Cyclone, meaning that you're never really worried about losing your double colourlesses. You sometimes can even discard 1 or even 2 early game if you know you're going to be saving them, if you know you're going to be switching them in between your Yveltals, knowing that they're not going to be going down anytime soon. It's just a really nice card, and it just helps power up the deck so well. And finally, 7 Dark Energy. There's no real reason to run 9 because there's no Dark Patch anymore, meaning that you don't want to be discarding all of them just to be able to Dark Patch them. But you don't want to have none. You don't want to have as little, so you can't be discarding them. You know they're precious, obviously, because Oblivion Wing can get them out of the discard. So there's no real reason to not discard 1 or 2 perhaps throughout the game just to power up something else with Oblivion Wing. But I feel 7's the right number. You draw into them when you need them. You discard them when you don't need them, and can still power things up with Oblivion Wing. It's just a really good number to have. But yeah, let's see if we can grab a game just before the end of the video. And yeah, there's the request from Joe. So we're going to go for that Yveltal Garbodor, and let's see what he's playing. Okay, so I'm seeing a Grass, a Metal, I think there was a Psychic there as well. So we're probably going to see, I'm not quite sure what that could be. I suppose it could be something like Yveltal or anything like that. Not Yveltal, Virgen Genesect, sorry, or anything like that. We do start with Yveltal, and yet there's the Genesect. So we're probably going to be playing a pretty straight Yveltal against Genesect. I'm pretty sure the Psychic will probably be Balloons, but he might run a Deoxys or something. I know a lot of players do that. It's really good for the Donphan matchup, so I could definitely see him using a Deoxys and the Balloons idea not being what the Psychic Energy is for. I'm going to bench another Yveltal and go for that Laser, because there's no Virizion in play at the moment, meaning that we're still going to be getting at least 10 damage off with the Laser, while the Virizion is not out. And hopefully he can't get the Virgen out for a little while. I know he's got not really much in his hand, but I'm going to end anyway because I really want to get that energy to be able to start doing a bit more damage. And we do indeed get the energy and the Muscle Band, so I'm going to attach both of those and just go for that Oblivion Wing for 50. There's nothing in the discard, and he's going to take an extra 10 damage from the poison. He stays asleep, which is really nice, and he's going to go for a Team Plasma Ball. Oh, he does run the Deoxys, so maybe there isn't any Drifloon blind. Oh, no, there's the Drifloon. So it looks like we're going to be playing against the Drifloon as well. And he's then going to Sycamore away a Chorus and a Grass Energy for a fresh 7. He does indeed get the Virizion, meaning that those two statuses on the Genesect are no longer there. And he's going to bench another Genesect and actually do 130 damage, which is crazy. So it does not looking too good for us. We've just lost our first Yveltal, but hopefully we can pull something back. I think I'm going to play this Verbank. No, I'm just going to go for the N. I'm not sure we're really going to need the Verbank, considering the Virizion is now in play. So I'm not thinking we're going to need the Verbank at all. I'll attach the energy and then discard Juniper and a Skylar with the Ultra Ball, going for a Yveltal EX, so we can start powering up with Oblivion Wing this turn. We're going to do another 30 damage to that Genesect EX, meaning that it's only 90 HP off of being knocked out, and we can start powering up the Yveltal on the bench. Obviously we've got the Juniper in hand for next turn, so hopefully we can get a double colourless or something to be able to knock out the benched Genesect, or the active Genesect, sorry. Looks like he's going to evolve into Drifblim and then use Red Signal. He's going to attach Plasma Energy from his hand onto Genesect and then use Red Signal onto the Yveltal. I can't see a way of him being able to knock out the Yveltal this turn unless he can get a G-Booster or something and get that Muscle Band off. So he's going to go for a Shadow Try to grab back a Colrus and actually do 130 damage. I'm tempted to attach the energy before a Juniper, but I think I'm better off keeping that energy in the discard just for Oblivion Wing later on. And we do indeed get the DCE. We get 3 DCEs actually, so we can use the DCE to power up the Yveltal, and then we'll be able to take out this Yveltal this turn. I'm going to use the Megaphone, though actually we're going to be knocking out the Yveltal anyway, the Genesect anyway, so perhaps I should have kept the Megaphone in hand for something later on, like a G-Booster or anything, but it doesn't really matter too much. We're going to be taking those 2 prizes, knocking out the Genesect. I also benched a Trubbish, if you didn't see that as well, just to hopefully, potentially turn off that ability with Drifblim, not Drifblim, that's what's come active, with the Virizion, meaning that we'll be able to use our lasers again. He's going to Muscle Band the Virizion, and then discard 2 switches with an Ultra Ball. So it looks like he's going to be going perhaps for another Virizion or a Genesect. He hasn't got the energy for the Drifblim at the moment, but he will have probably from this Chorus, sorry. He's going to go for an Enhanced Hammer and get rid of that double colourless, meaning that he's then going to be able to do some damage with the, I think it's, I'm not sure what the attack's called, but he's going to be doing 50 damage. It's based on how many specials are in the discard. So he's going to be able to knock out that Yveltal EX and go up to 3 prizes. So it's not looking too good. I'm going to attach the Muscle Band here, meaning that we can one-shot this Drifblim, considering it's got a weakness to Dark. And then I'm going to attach the Headringer to the Genesect, just so it can't G-Booster at all. Or it can, but, well, it can't without getting rid of the having a way of getting rid of that Headringer first. It looks like I have to attach an energy here with Oblivion Wing, which is not nice, because you don't want your energy on the Garbodor. But if that's fair enough. I didn't actually know that you had to do that. That's interesting. So we'll attach the energy to the Garbodor, taking the prize, getting a Colrus. And looks like he's just attaching and passing. That's not nice. I'm going to throw that Verbank down now, considering we've got a Garbodor in play, meaning that there is a chance that we're going to be able to get rid of that ability. And I was going to Colrus there, but I think I'm going to go for the Lysander instead on the Deoxys and try and stall that out, because he could have, he has the ability to retreat next turn, and he could have another energy to be able to use Emerald Slash, but with that Deoxys he's going to need a switching card or another way of retreating that Deoxys. And unfortunately we're going to have to put another Dark Energy onto the Garbodor, which again is not nice. But unfortunately there's no way around that. We've done 50 damage to Deoxys, so that could be a late game that we could take out of nowhere with Yveltal EX. It's only got 120 HP left. He does indeed have the switch and the energy for the Virizion, so he's going to be getting an Emerald Slash this turn. But he doesn't quite knock out the Yveltal. Going to power up that Genesect on the bench without the Head Ringer. Sensible, because that means he can attack next turn. I'm not sure what he's going to do. I think I'm gonna go for the Colrus just to get 4 new cards. There's no real need for that Lysander at the moment, and we get a really good 4 cards actually. Bench the Yveltal EX and then attach the DC to it, and then I can bike for 3. So we've got some things. I'm gonna go for the Floatstone on the Garbodor, meaning that Verdant Wind ability on Yveltal EX is no longer in play. Also, Deoxys aren't going to be powering up attacks anymore, and he won't be able to red signal anymore. I'll go for the 50 damage, and then yeah, he's going to go for that Megaphone, so he can now use his abilities again after that long explanation about how he can't use his abilities, but he can use his abilities again. So we're going to need to find another tool if we want to power up that Garbodor. He's then going to use red signal to bring up the Garbodor, and if he knocks out, I'm completely fine with him knocking out if he does, because it's going to mean that we can get 2 more Darks into the discard. Obviously the 2 Darks that are stuck on the active. I'm just looking through his discard here to see how many Plasma energy he's used. It looks like I think there was 1 in the discard, and then there's 2 on the board, so he's only got 1 left in deck, providing it's not his last. One of his last prizes. Going for the Skylar there, that's interesting. Probably to go for the G booster or something. He's then going to retreat and be able to knock out the Garbodor and the Yveltal in 1 turn. So that really puts us on a 1 turn clock, especially if he has that Skylar to be able to get the G booster or anything like that. He might go for the G booster here actually. Okay, he's going to go for an energy switch. Energy switch, putting it onto the Genesect on the bench, meaning that I suppose he could. There's a way of him still attacking with that Genesect on the bench, because he could Colrus Machine to attach a Plasma from his deck if it's definitely in the deck, if he knows it's there, and then attach return. But it really puts us on a 1 turn clock, because he's only got to take 1 prize now, which is not pretty scary. I could N him here, but I think I'm probably going to discard the N and the double colourless with the Ultra Ball, just so we can get another Yveltal out, just for something to absorb damage if we need to. He needs to take 1 prize, so we can put more 2 prize basics down. That's completely fine. We do get the second Head Ringer in the deck, meaning that I can prevent him getting a G booster on if he doesn't have a way of getting rid of that tool on his Genesect active. He may run something like Tool Retrieval to get rid of both of those Head Ringers at once, but I haven't seen it so far, so maybe he doesn't run it. I'm just going to attach the Yveltal, and then I think I'm going to computer search. No, I might save that for next turn, so we can grab what we want next turn, because that Lysander really isn't helpful at the moment, and if he knows we've computer searched for a Juniper or anything like that, it's going to mean he's probably going to N us or something like that, taking us down to 3 cards, though we might be knocking out this Genesect this turn actually. But yeah, I think I'm going to save that computer search for next turn. I know he's going to be able to respond with an attack at the least somehow, but we're going to be doing 140 damage with the Evil Ball, so he knows he's going to be going down definitely next turn, considering there's no way that I can't see a way of him getting the G booster this turn, if I'm completely honest. He's going to get rid of that special energy, which is not nice at all, and Ultra Ball for a Drifloon. That could actually be quite a threat, considering we've got 3 double colourless in the discard. So that Drifloon is going to be doing 150 damage, which is really strong. He's going to use Red Signal to capture up this Yveltal EX, and then probably just do a bit of damage to it. Yeah, he's going to go for the 110, and the chat system is unavailable. Probably do 110. We do have the switch in hand, so I'm not too bothered about the Yveltal being active. I think the main threat here actually is the bench Drifloon, because that thing can come in for 1 energy and knock out either of my EXs, because it only needs to do 150 damage now. So that Drifloon could be a threat. I think I'm going to computer search here probably to try and save this guy. Obviously we can switch out, but I'm trying to work out what to knock out. I'm pretty sure the Drifloon is the best thing to knock out. So I'm going to Lysander at that Drifloon, and then computer search probably to get the double colourless. I think I'm just going to switch before I do that, just to make sure. I think I'm going to switch, yeah, just to make sure I'm counting my cards right, just so I know I'm not going to discard it. I do not need the Garbodor whatsoever, or the second Verbank, so I can quite happily discard both of those with computer search. And I'm just going to have a quick look through the deck. We could get a bike and risk going for the DCE and get a couple of extra cards, but I think the main thing, I think I'd rather the security of grabbing that double colourless. I think that's the best option here. He does have 2 retreat, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to evolve into Drifloon this turn, so I'm going to go for that double colourless, and I'm going to Evil Ball, I think, because there's no real reason to put it on the benched Yveltal EX, especially as it doesn't have any other energy on it. So we're down to 2 prizes. We just need to take a prize on one of the EXs in play. He's got that Jirachi, which could be a pretty good target, but he's going to send up the weak Genesect. I personally would have sent up the other Genesect, because you've still got enough energy on it to retreat quite happily. So if you do have a way of getting the G booster on, and if not, that Genesect won't die in 1 hit, whereas the one active at the moment will. It looks like he's, unless that is that prize was his last plasma energy. Oh no, he's got 4 plasma energy on the field at the moment. He's actually got no deck as well, I've just noticed. So it looks like we're going to be, if I manage to live this turn, I can actually just pass the turn to be able to. It doesn't even matter that I need to knock out this Genesect. So yeah, I think he knows that. He's going to G-boost to the Deoxys and just do 110 damage, knowing that we have the ability to knock out. So I'm just going to use these 2 lasers, a bit like his G-boost, drawn to the Deoxys. It's not going to do anything, but why not? And then we're going to be able to knock out with Evil Ball, or actually Y-Cyclone, either of them, to take our last 2 prizes. I'm going to go for the Evil Ball, just to do a nice 160 damage. So that'll be 300 damage dealt total to the Genesect, and we're going to take the last 2 prizes, which are actually 2 Darks. So we did quite well not having too much energy there. But yeah, Yveltal really does well about when conserving energy. It's like we saw there, 2 of the energy were prized, and we still managed to do pretty well. So yeah, Yveltal's definitely a threat at the moment. But yeah, thank you for watching. I've been Jack from Omnipoke, and stay tuned for more videos.